If you're a fan of Ronnie James Dio, I think you'll enjoy what we have for you here today. Dio's been on my mind a lot lately because some of you know I took a recent trip to Thailand, and when I was on the plane, I listened to two different books, and one of them was Brothers by Alex Van Halen, and the other one was a book called Rainbow in the Dark, which basically tells the story of Ronnie James Dio. And it's actually a really interesting book. I mean, it goes into great depth in his early days when he first started becoming a musician, performer, Elf coming together, that whole thing. It was really, really interesting stuff. So I've been thinking about him a lot. I've always been a fan of Dio. I became a fan of Dio when I first heard the soundtrack for heavy metal. And I think a lot of us, that was our first exposure to both Dio and Black Sabbath. We were young, and here's this soundtrack that comes out, and we hear this song called Mob Rules, and this is Black Sabbath as far as we're concerned. We didn't know really any different at the time. And this guy's voice was so amazing. I mean, just listening to that song, Mob Rules, is just so incredible. And just it's something interesting, the recording on Heavy Metal is not the same recording on the album Mob Rules, by the way, if you didn't know. The one on Heavy Metal, I think, actually is more powerful, although they're both awesome. Anyway, so then, of course, you know the story. He joined Black Sabbath after being with Rainbow. They put out the album Heaven and Hell, which was just fantastic. And then they put out Mob Rules, which I actually loved too. And then there was this whole thing, they were going to put this live album out, and it was called Live Evil. And depending on who you listen to, Dio has his story, and he tells a little bit about it in his book. And then Geezer has his story, and Tony has his story, and all of them have this, they talk about this in their books. The long and the short of it is, they had a falling out, it was kind of ugly, and then Dio decided to go off and form his own band. And so the Live Evil came out in January of '83, and then Dio went and started his own band, and they put out their first album, which was called Holy Diver, on May 25th of 1983, so just a few months after Live Evil came out. And it was kind of interesting because when Dio left Black Sabbath, Vinny Appice had stepped in and was playing drums in place of Bill Ward. And Vinny decided to leave with Ronnie James Dio and go start this new band. And I refer to it as a solo thing, but it was, the band was called Dio. But I think most of us look at that and go, well, this was Ronnie James Dio's kind of solo effort, even though the band itself was called Dio. And, that band ended up being a little bit of a revolving door of musicians coming in and out of it. So anyway, we're going to do something that we haven't done in a while, though. And what I've got here is 2 concert reviews of that first tour with Ronnie James Dio or the new band Dio that happened within just a couple of days of each other. And one of them is really a positive review, and the other one is not so positive. And before I read these, if you saw Dio on this tour, this would have been back in '83. I would love to get your feedback on what that was like. I didn't go see him on this tour, and I'd love to hear what your experience was seeing Ronnie James Dio at this period in his career. So anyway, I'm going to share these things with you. I think you're going to enjoy it. Love to get your feedback on this stuff. So this first one is from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and it is October 18th, 1983. And the headline is "No Black Sabbath, but Lots of Hard Rock." Dallas. Former Black Sabbath lead singer Ronnie James Dio has survived his unfriendly exit from that legendary heavy metal band quite nicely. In fact, he appeared stronger than ever in concert Saturday night when he and his new band, which he is calling Dio, put on a hard-rocking display at the Bronco Bowl. It was last year that Ronnie left Black Sabbath under rather messy circumstances, with original Sabbath members Geezer Butler and Tony Iommi charging that he had tried to take over control of the band. There were other charges, countercharges, and lots of heated words tossed back and forth through the media. But now that all the dust has cleared, Dio, The man and the band are flying high. The new group also includes Vinny Appice on drums, Jimmy Bain on bass, and Vivian Campbell on guitar. Appice was available because he exited Sabbath at the same time Dio left. Ronnie knew Bain from the days when both were members of Rainbow, and it was Bain who suggested they recruit Campbell, a 21-year-old guitarist from Belfast, Ireland, who used to play with a band called Sweet Savage. And that's another thing. I still remember the first time I heard Vivian Campbell playing. I remember this. I was at a concert at a small venue called the Rainbow Music Hall in Denver, Colorado. I don't remember what band I was there to see, but before all the concerts they'd play there, they just have music videos playing. And I remember this music video came up, and it was Dio, and it might have been Holy Diver now that I think about it, the video. But then Vivian comes out, and I mean, he's up on the screen, of course, in the video, and he starts playing, and I was just blown away. The guy was so amazing, and what he played was so good. Anyway, I'd like to get your feedback too. Do you remember the first time you heard Vivian play? Because he was really, really something. The Dio Foursome's first album, Holy Diver, is now surging up the charts after a slow start, thanks in part to the airplay given the song Rainbow in the Dark on the MTV cable station. Of course, that tune was one of the highlights of Saturday night's 10-song, 85-minute concert that not only featured Holy Diver material, but also music from Ronnie's days with Sabbath, with whom he recorded 3 albums, and Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, with whom he served as lead singer on the first 5 albums. Dio and company opened their Bronco Bowl show with 3 tunes from the new album, Stand Up and Shout, Straight Through the Heart, and Shame on the Night, before dipping into the Sabbath repertoire of Children of the Sea. In introducing the latter, Dio simply said, "This is from the days that Vinny and I were in a band called Black Sabbath. We enjoyed it." That sounds, if you ever watch Dio in live settings, he just isn't a big, in between songs, he just kind of has this very, we enjoyed it. It's so funny watching him in concert. I didn't see him on this tour, but you watch footage of him in concert, and that sounds exactly like something you'd say. We enjoyed it. Anyway, it's funny stuff. Then came the title track from Holy Diver before Dio went further back into the past for Stargazer from his period with Rainbow. That was followed by Heaven and Hell, his best-known Sabbath song, and then by his first big solo hit, the smoking Rainbow in the Dark. The group left the stage following Dio's most famous Rainbow song, Man on the Silver Mountain, but came back for the encore, Evil Eyes. Opening the show was Y&T, an Oakland band that finally is starting to make its move 5 albums deep into its recording career. This is actually interesting, by the way, too. Do you guys remember Y&T? I have a whole bunch of their albums. I don't know. Dave Manichetti had this killer voice, and he seemed cool, but I just didn't. I bought a bunch of their stuff, but I didn't love them that much. Album number 5, Mean Streak on A&M, has started to garner some recognition for the 4-man group: lead singer, guitarist Dave Manichetti, bassist Phil Kennemore, drummer Leon Hayes, and guitarist Joey Alves, I don't know how you say his name, that formerly was known as Yesterday and Today. Their 8-song, 45-minute set featured a hard-hitting version of the latest album title song, with new numbers as Hang 'em High and Take You to the Limit. Okay, so he and although it wasn't a super positive review, it just wasn't a negative one. It was just kind of saying, here's what they did, and it wasn't a negative review. It was a review of the concert, said what happened, and a bunch of great tunes too, by the way. That old Rainbow stuff, Man on the Silver Mountain, was such a cool tune. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you the concert review that was really not good. And this was the one that we just read, was October 18th of 1983, Fort Worth Star. This one is October 20th, 2 days later, the Kansas City Star. October 20th, 1983. And there's a picture of the band right there. Ronnie James Dio, short of a good show. No amount of self-indulgent guitar noodling, no yawn, 10-minute drum solo, and no amount of thanking and glad-handing the audience can disguise the fact that vocalist Ronnie James Dio and his band Dio gave a shamefully short and mindlessly mediocre performance of barely more than an hour Wednesday night at the Uptown Theater. About 700 people heard 9 songs in all, 5 of which, Holy Diver, Stand Up and Shout, Straight Through the Heart, Rainbow in the Dark, and Shame on the Night, were from his first and current solo album, Holy Diver. The 4 other songs included some from the Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, and Rainbow, Man on the Silver Mountain, phases of his career. Like some sort of heavy metal hamburger helper, Mr. Dio and company used several concert cliches to stretch his selections, including the overly long drum solo on Holy Diver, an aimless air raid siren-sounding guitar solo on Heaven and Hell, nice echo delay on the vocals, however, and the ever-popular sing-along, I Can't Hear You, Kansas City, contest between sections of the concert hall. How many times have you sat through one of those things? Okay, everybody in the back. Okay, on the left side. In a recent telephone interview before his Kansas City appearance, Mr. Dio said he thought heavy metal music in general had regressed despite the current popularity of bands such as his own, Def Leppard, Quiet Riot, and Iron Maiden. Quote, everyone just cranks it up, plays the same riff, talks about the same things, which are, hey kids, we're all young, let's rock and roll forever, isn't rock and roll wonderful, he said. Well, I find that to be mindless. Exactly, Mr. Dio. The Invasion, a Grandview band with more enthusiastic posturing than apparent ability, opened the show. So it sounds like maybe a local band called the Invasion opened up that concert. So there are 2 concert reviews from Dio's Holy Diver tour, and love to get your feedback on it if you saw those shows. And also, what was your feedback as far as Dio is concerned? Did you have a similar experience to me where you discovered him when he was with Black Sabbath and then became a fan of that just crazy voice that he had, and then obviously followed him into that solo career, and then just, I thought Holy Diver really was just a kind of a masterpiece of hard rock and heavy metal at the time. Anyway, hey, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Please follow the channel if you haven't followed the channel yet. Like the video, and share your thoughts and comments. And with that, have yourself a fantastic day.